internal starvation of 2 million people in Gaza in the name of the Jewish people with the backing of the U.S. government. I was the first Jewish official, the only Jewish official to resign from the Biden administration to protest this genocide. I urge every Jewish person to be in the streets, protesting this, getting arrested, taking as much risk as you can.
Thank you. And you?
Every life is a universe. I'm a rabbi for ceasefire who believes we need to end the starvation in Gaza. It's a Jewish value to protect life at all costs.
As you just saw, there are hundreds of Jews gathered at Columbus Circle, mobilizing as they reject the U.S.'s continued support for Israeli starvation policies. Joining me is one of tonight's rally speakers, Lily Greenberg Call. Welcome, Lily.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Of course. So before we get into a discussion about where we are today politically, can you just share with people why this issue is important to you and also how you responded to this issue when you were part of the Biden administration?
Yeah, of course. So I am a former appointee in the Biden-Harris administration. I'm also an American Jew, and I grew up in a very, very involved in Jewish community. I'm from Southern California. I went to day school. I went to camp. I did all of that. And I also have a lot of close Israeli friends and family. And so was, very both personally and politically connected to Israel in my life growing up here. And because of that, I got involved with pro-Israel advocacy very young, throughout high school and college. And it was a very natural thing for me to do as someone who was interested in politics and interested in social justice, honestly, and interested in, fighting back against anti-Semitism. And I was lucky to have a lot of opportunities as I got older, as I went to school, as I started getting involved in other movement work and human rights work to unlearn some of the things that I had been taught about Israel and to really learn a fuller story of what Israel means for Palestinians and the reality of apartheid and occupation on the ground. And so I, feel very there's a lot of people that I love and care about, Israelis and Palestinians. And I also think that as an American, we are particularly implicated in this genocide. And when I was working in the Biden-Harris administration, my work wasn't around foreign policy at all. I had been a campaign staffer. I was working at the Department of Interior. But once October 7th happened, it became very clear to me that the president was, that our policy on our unconditional support for Israel's war crimes was unacceptable, and that the president himself was really using Jewish safety as a way to justify continued support for and weapons for and diplomatic support for Israel in this time. And so I decided to resign just over a year ago in May of 2024 and resign publicly. I felt that it was my obligation to do so, and particularly my obligation as a Jewish appointee to be very clear about where I stood, and to kind of reset some of the narrative about the necessity of these crimes for Jewish safety and even for Israeli safety. And so now, here we are, almost 2 years into this phase of the genocide, and we're seeing intentional man-made mass starvation in Gaza, and finally, some level of kind of waking up amongst, I would say, mainstream Jewish community and, the American political media narrative overall. And I think, that's why there's going to be so many of us gathered in Columbus Circle today to as visibly as Jews and allies, take a stand against this.
So as someone who's worked on the inside, what policy changes need to happen so that Israel's starvation policy can be ended? Or is that not going to happen and we just have to get aid in?
I think, right now, aid and medical care and, all of the things that people are saying, it's not just food, right? People need food and all of these. If they're just given food right now, that actually won't be enough to save people's lives. That I think just needs to be the immediate priority. But the continuing to have unconditional military aid for Israel allows them to have impunity when it comes to this. And even if there is a short, a ceasefire or a short-term ceasefire and an aid corridor is opened up, there's nothing to say that this won't continue, right? And it won't just like the cycle will continue again and again. So I think I think there should be a real like pause on aid of any kind to Israel, military, any kind of aid, until, I mean, the thing is right now too, like Israel has broken conditions that it should be following to receive US military assistance.
Right.
There are rules, there are
Law.
conditions. Exactly.
Yes.
That almost every other country has to follow. And like, of course we can pick and choose when we want to enforce those, but it's very clear, right? That like, that's the thing, is that this isn't a policy issue. The protocol is there, like the outline is there. We know what we could do to fix this. It's a political issue, and it's an incentive issue. And so that's where like we need to shift that incentive for people in power so that they know that voters will hold them accountable, and that the money that they receive from the pro-Israel lobby is not going to be enough to like keep them in office. And we need to make that money just as toxic as anything else, like the NRA money or big oil money, right? If you're a Democrat, you should not be able to accept AIPAC money. But unfortunately, like they can. And that's how a lot of right-wing money ends up in Democratic politics, through crypto and oil money. And all those people funnel their money into the pro-Israel lobby because they know they can't get it in there anywhere else.
So what needs to happen?
The Democratic base needs to show up for people. I mean, we lost some of those folks in Congress last year, right? Like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, but needs to show up for people who are either running or electeds already, who refuse to take AIPAC money, and who the folks who have like introduced the Block the Bombs Act, and the people who voted for Bernie Sanders JRD. People need to show up for them financially. They also just need to show up for them and organize for them, and they need to like get their communities involved and make sure that these people are protected. And I don't think there's a world where we raise like the amount of money that AIPAC can bring in, and that the right can bring in. They have, especially now that there's an alliance with crypto, they have buckets of money. But I don't think we need that amount of, we saw with the Zoran race in New York, like you don't need to be able to outspend these people. You need to run a campaign that speaks to people, that actually like addresses the issues that they care about, that is honest and authentic, because voters know when they're being bullshitted. They know when they're being gaslit. I think people can feel that. They might not understand all of the like political strategy behind something or the like policy wonky stuff, but they can know when. I've had people tell me, knocking doors, like, at least with Republicans, I know what I'm getting myself into, and Democrats are kind of hypocrites, and people feel that. But you cannot be a party of human rights, or say that you are, or a party that is anti-authoritarian, that is anti-fascist, that is trying to fight fascism here at home, and then fund it and enable it abroad. It doesn't make sense. It is completely morally unclear to people. And I think if there is any time for AIPAC to become toxic within the Democratic Party, it is now. It is 2026 and 2028.